Warning! This video contains spoilers for My Hero Academia. If you haven't read up to at least chapter 257, don't watch this video. Alternatively, you could wait for season 5 to just finish airing. You'd certainly have more patience than me. Was rearranging MVA a good idea? No. Or at least, not the way Studio Bones handled it. I'm going to tell you a secret. When the anime announced it was putting the Endeavor Agency arc first, I was actually really optimistic. We already had tons of outside proof that MVA would appear eventually this season, ranging from the OST titles to a visual preview to Horikoshi straight up saying it on Twitter. So I figured that rearranging the arcs, if handled well, could actually enhance one of my favorite storylines of the series. So, did they do it? Did they rearrange things in a way that elevated MVA beyond its manga counterpart? No. Now, this hasn't been confirmed, but many people, myself included, believe Bones did all this shuffling to ensure Endeavor Agency would air before the release of the third movie, which... okay, obviously I can't comment since I haven't seen it, so let's just focus on what we know. As of making this video, the villain arc hasn't actually started in the anime yet. I'm recording this on August 9th, which means the next episode is the Shirokuma one, and then the one after is MVA, according to the teaser in Shonen Jump. However, we don't actually need the villain arc to be released yet because all that matters, for this video, is the framing. Today, let's take a look at what made the build-up to the villain arc in the manga work so well, what I was hoping the anime would do, what they actually did, and what they could have done in the anime to fix it. Part 1. Re-Destro's Introduction. Want to know how Re-Destro is introduced in the manga? He's a goofy-looking businessman who laments over his appearance in a jokingly lighthearted way. He has a silly face reminiscent of Dr. Doofenshmirtz that you just can't help but fall in love with. A few pages later, he kills his assistant. Yeah. We're first shown Re-Destro the way he wants to be perceived, a trustworthy, friendly businessman who doesn't take himself too seriously. But almost immediately, the audience is thrown for a loop when we learn that not only is he terrifyingly powerful, but he also has the resources to cover up his crimes afterwards. It's an awesome introduction that makes him immediately stand out from the other villains in the series. Compare him to Shigaraki, whose first appearance looks like something straight out of a nightmare. This trick with Re-Destro makes him more memorable, while also creating intrigue surrounding his character. Keep all that in the back of your mind. I'll get back to that in a moment. Part 2. The League Returns. I'm going to tell you a little piece of trivia that I bet you didn't know. Ever since their introduction in the USJ arc, the League has appeared in every single arc except 3. And while that doesn't sound all too impressive, let's take a look at how this actually plays out. USJ features Shigaraki as the main antagonist. The sports festival occasionally cuts to Shigaraki in his room watching the broadcast. The Hero Killer arc features multiple appearances courtesy of Shigaraki. The Final Exams arc has Shigaraki meet Dabi and Toga. The training camp features the Vanguard Action Squad as the main antagonists. The Hideout Raid has the entire League present. The Provisional License exam secretly features Toga the entire time, with a quick appearance from Shigaraki and Compress at the end. The Overhaul arc features the entire League at various points. The Provisional License training features... no one. The League is mentioned, but they never actually appear. Same with the Culture Festival. Gentle Criminal mentions the League, but we never actually see them. The Pro Hero arc shows us a member of the League, but in a much different context than we've ever seen them before. Dabi appears entirely alone, with no mention of the whereabouts of his teammates. In the past, if a League member appeared alone, we were often shown quickly after where everyone else was. For example, Toga is alone after the license exam, but a quick phone call shows us where Shigaraki and Compress are. Meanwhile, when Twice is alone at the start of Overhaul, he mentions that the others are spread to keep the pros off their backs, and we actually get to see Magna, Spinner, and Dabi. So when Dabi appears at the end of Pro Hero alone, with no indication of where his teammates went, we immediately know something is up. Then we get joint training, where, once again, none of the League members show up. The fact that this reoccurring presence has randomly disappeared without explanation immediately sparks the question of where they went. If it were 3 random arcs spread throughout the story where they didn't appear, I probably wouldn't have noticed. But for them to all be successive? Now that's cause for concern. And then the villain arc starts, and after meeting the MLA, we are immediately treated to a flashback just after the overhaul arc, explaining why the League has been so quiet. Suddenly, their presence becomes almost comforting. We haven't seen them in so long, and we finally get to see what they've been going through for all these months before jumping into the main MVA arc. Between that and the Re-Destro introduction, it's a pretty solid setup for the arc, right? Yeah. Let's see how the anime messed it up. Part 3, How the Anime Messed It Up. Episode 103 is the moment I lost all hope for the setup of the villain arc. Now, I'll talk about why I even had this hope in just a second, but oh my gosh, this episode. So we meet Re-Destro and he's sitting in an ominous dark room, speaking in a creepy, sinister voice. No more funny businessman. Oh no. This dude is so clearly evil that it's not even a question what side he's on. And how about the mystery of the League? Remember how we didn't see them for so long? Did the anime continue the build-up of suspense by removing them from the narrative? Nope, they are all here. They're working with this creepy evil guy, they have troops, they have a table. According to Hawks, they have some massive power. By including the League here, it undermines the tensions and stakes when the villain arc actually gets animated. This is best exemplified with Toga. In the manga, a lot of people weren't sure if she was, around, but when the anime eventually gets to this point, well, we saw her at the table. We know that in the back of our minds, she's absolutely fine. Part 4, Why I Had Hope in the First Place. So, after all that, why did I ever have hope that rearranging the arcs could be good? Because yes, for those first 2 Endeavor Agency episodes, I still had hope. Well, let's take a look at what may have motivated them to rearrange the setup, besides the movie. Okay, so I love MVA, obviously, and chances are if you're watching this video, you loved it too. But there are people out there who didn't love it. I've even seen people who said they straight up dropped the manga until this arc was done because they didn't care about the villains. This means that an entire anime arc dedicated to the villains probably wouldn't have gone over well. And honestly, when you're put in that sort of risky position, it can be tempting to rearrange things. By putting the villain arc after Endeavor Agency, the anime has now framed MVA as a flashback with a purpose, not a random arc that ditches the kids without warning. Endeavor Agency could set up the mystery of what this powerful group is that Hawks is investigating, and how it got so powerful, and then MVA provides the explanation as a flashback. This would ground MVA as something that's necessary for the plot. Its existence is justified by the narrative by asking a questions that viewers would have, which would encourage people who hate the villains to stick around. After all, wouldn't they want an explanation for the big, mysterious group that Hawks is investigating? Outside of solidifying its place in the narrative, though, these rearrangements also affect 2 other plot points in very interesting, positive ways: Toya and Shirakumo. We get a whole ton of information regarding Toya in the Pro Hero and Joint Training arcs, including his name and his quirk. However, in the manga, we must trudge through the villain arc before getting Toya's face reveal. By moving this scene closer to every time he was mentioned, the anime actually improved the likeliness of people being invested in Toya's mystery. As for Shirakumo, they'll be giving us his episode directly before MVA begins, meaning we will get to see just how much Kurogiri cares for Shigaraki's well-being, before the next episode features a scene where Shigaraki laments Kurogiri's capture. Assuming it doesn't get cut, of course. This scene is nearly meaningless in the manga, but by recontextualizing it so we know everything about Kurogiri, it gives the scene a lot more weight. Kurogiri was likely his primary care provider, and was probably more of a father figure than All for One was. These scenes existing in back-to-back episodes allow for more emotional moments with these characters. So yeah, long story short, rearranging the arcs could have worked very well, both for enhancing the Toya and Shirakumo plotlines, and for grounding MVA in the narrative as something more obviously necessary. Part 5, My Rewrite. For this rewrite, we're going to keep things as similar as possible to the original. This means I'll keep episodes in the same order, and most scenes will stay where they are. There's really only a few exceptions to this. I debated how I should present my rewrite to you, but I think the best option is to simply walk you through it episode by episode and explain the goal of each change. And no, I won't be trying to add more episodes to MVA. That's a topic for another video. We start with episode 101. Deku comes in with his narration, and we see a city crumble. As the debris falls to the ground, we see a terrified and concerned Spinner, Compress, Dabi, and Twice staring at alarm at an unknown force, supposedly whatever is causing the damage. There's no sign of Shigaraki or Toga. The rest of the episode would then continue as normal, being sure to put a little extra emphasis on this terrifying Deka City incident. Episode 102 kicks off with the flashback of Hawks on the phone with Dabi just after the Nomu thing. Hawks chats with Best Jeanist before we cut to the present, which is apparently New Year's Eve. We see Hawks concerned that Dabi hasn't contacted him in a while, and that none of the League has been spotted recently. Meanwhile, the kids follow Endeavor around, and it all plays out pretty much the same. At the end, Endeavor gets Hawks' message about the Liberation Army. This brings us to episode 103, which is where the rewrites really kick in. Hawks returns to this place, and while wandering the hall looking for the cafeteria, he bumps into a silly-looking man in a suit. Perhaps there can be hints through framing that this guy is more dangerous than his appearance suggests, but it shouldn't be too explicit. Either way, the man praises Hawks for spreading the word of Destro, and the two go off to a meeting room together. During his walk, Hawks thinks about how the Metal Liberation Army has bases all around Japan, with heroes amongst their ranks, and we learn that the work studies are actually meant to prepare the kids as backup in case they need to fight. However, we never see Hawks and the man enter the meeting room. That is saved for later. The rest of the episode will continue as it was in the real series. Quick intermission to explain my thoughts. The goal of all this would be to trick the audience into thinking that the Metal Liberation Army is some new threat that popped out of nowhere. As well, we want to trick the audience into thinking that the League might have low-key died in the Deka City incident. We saw them back in 101 staring in horror as the city crumbled around them. We know Hawks has randomly lost contact with Dabi, and we know that this Metal Liberation Army doesn't seem inhibited by the League at all. So that's the mindset going forward. The League is dead and MLA took their place. Back to the rewrite. Episode 104 to 107 will all stay the same. In a perfect rewrite, I'd cut the movie tie-in and restructure the Todoroki scenes, but that's not what I'm here to do right now. Episode 108 flashes back and allows us to see our beloved League again, picking up shortly after Overhaul. In whatever episode the MLA appear, we would see them challenge the League, and we would learn that they want to kill them. At this point, alarm bells should be going off in everyone's mind. Did the MLA succeed? Are we seeing the story of how the League got defeated? We continue following the manga plot until the scene from episode 101 where the city crumbles, only now the audience is given full context. This isn't the League losing, this is Shigaraki's awakening. Alternatively, it could be Gigantomachia rampaging through the city. Either one works. Eventually, we are shown the introduction to the Paranormal Liberation Front, and from there we cut back to Hawks and Re-Destro going to the meeting room. Remember, all the way back in 103? We see the full scene now, the leaders of the PLF sitting around waiting for Hawks. The scene would then play out as it did in the manga. We can also add Twice's comment. Later, Hawks can think on Dabi's comment of how the kids haven't improved much, and that can lead us back to the progress chapters to close out the season, which, may I remind you, have been foreshadowed in the OP. Through simply shifting things around, I think I managed to construct a narrative that's both mysterious for anime-onlys and intriguing for manga readers. I didn't add anything new, I simply reordered a few manga scenes and gave them new context. But what did you guys think? Would you have preferred my version, or did you like the real one better? Either way, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!